Just kind of bouncing along to the intro song. How you doing today, Tim?
Just fine, just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day here in Seattle. We are, of course, your usual Code Remix weekly hosts, Tim and Sam. Tim, I understand you have just gotten certified to climb mountains, to be a rock climber of some kind. As
Uh,
how'd that happen?
that's maybe stretching it just a bit. As in, I'm now certified to belay indoors, so that's a
Okay,
step
okay.
on
So
the
so
way
long
to
as they
doing
so long
like
as they build
adventurous things.
a hangar over the mountain, you're qualified to belay
Yeah,
someone up the side of it.
but
That makes
only
sense.
if the rope is already attached to the top.
Someone else
So
has to
not
attach the rope. Okay.
it's like baby steps on the way to being a great adventurer one day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to take a few baby steps. Otherwise, you do one of those. You end up in a documentary about someone climbing a big mountain, but not one of the good documentaries that has the happy ending.
Yeah, yeah. That's a couple of good ones I can recommend, but it's not all cheerful watching. No.
For sure. So, how does someone who lives in the flattest country in the world come to even realize that there are things out there to climb? How did you get into rock climbing?
It is a constant struggle, yes. But we do have an indoor gym about like, I don't know, 10 minutes that way.
That's good.
And it's that one is 40 meters tall, which is, I know, a lot of bananas. I don't quite
All
know
right,
how
that
many.
is that's quite tall.
And then, I don't know, it's fun to just go up from the bottom to tap the roof and come back down again. So
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely. There's several bouldering gyms in Seattle that I've been to, and occasionally even ones where you uh, require belaying. Although I enjoy the spontaneity of just being able to hop on and off the kind of smaller walls. Although I have found, and maybe this is just my lack of skill and athleticism talking, I have found that I feel like they maybe compensate for the lack of height with additional difficulty of like, all right, this wall is short, but you're gonna have to like do some crazy stuff to
Yeah,
to to
yeah,
even start. And I'm like, come on, does the starting position
yeah.
itself have to be a challenge? But sometimes it does.
Yeah, and it is. I like both disciplines. With
Hmm.
climbing, the challenge is that while the grade might be similar to what you do in bouldering, the problem is somewhere high up, and then you have to figure out what the hell to do when you're already tired. So yeah, it is fun.
Absolutely. So what's next? Is this have you arrived at a level of certification of rock climbing acumen where you've achieved your goals, or do you
Yeah.
do you want to now next be the person who climbs up the mountain, setting the pitons, and placing the rope at the top for others to follow?
Yeah, the latter part. So sometime probably next summer, judging by how it's already getting dark this time of year, I
Mm.
hope to do some more outdoor climbing and some more adventures. So yeah,
Have
should be
you
good.
have you seen the video game Peak? Since we're talking about this,
Don't think I have. Is this
it
like a
it
90s reference or a very recent one?
this is very recent. This is very recent. I was just playing it last night. It's one of these co-op uh, games where you play with friends and your hijinks are a big part of the fun. But the central
Mm-hmm.
thing that you do in this game is climb a mountain, right? There are no
Oh,
enemies. Well, that's not entirely
pretty
true. In the
good.
desert area, there are some scorpions, but like it's not about combat. It's about surviving to get to the top of a mountain, and you have to manage your stamina and everything.
Yeah.
Hunger depletes your stamina, carrying weight reduces your max stamina,
Yep.
having fallen and taken an injury reduces stamina. And so you can find various tools, ropes and other wackier things with which to climb. So you might well be in a situation where you have a hurt friend who has really low stamina, so you might need to climb up. Like, you might need to take the backpack with the stuff in it, climb up above, and like drop down a rope for them, or lend a helping
Yeah.
hand or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. And it could be a good time. So for anyone who is trapped in the flatlands of Holland, might enjoy that one if a climbing gym is not as conveniently placed, and if you feel the primal urge to summit something.
It does seem more accessible with not like a 6 hour drive before there's any kind of like elevation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we should try playing it sometime. I think you would enjoy it. Because it's multiplayer. You can have four people. I played with a group of friends who installed a
yeah.
mod to uncap the player count. So we had like eight or
Ah, nice.
ten
Yeah.
people all scrambling up the side of these mountains, and we were keeping that track of close track of each other. So every now and then someone would fall and die, and you'd have a little ghost following you around, and you resurrect them at the top of each individual stage. Anyway, it's fun.
As you do.
We
As
should
you do. Yeah.
yeah, we should. We could give it a try sometime. We could play it internally for like a morale event, or just for
Yeah. Yeah.
funsies.
Yeah, I was wondering like what a good time would be where neither of us is working or supposed to be working. And,
I mean, with the difference in time zones, there's just no there's no good time. We'd have to just put it on the calendar, make it official.
yeah,
That's why, I mean, you call it
yeah,
a morale event. You can do anything for a little while. It's like this isn't, we're working here, even though we're playing a Pictionary or Gartic Phone or something.
sounds
Anyway,
good. Yeah.
what kind of announcements do we have for the week, Tim?
I'll take us through a couple just now. First one is that we're quite excited to announce that we now officially have planned dates for the next Open Road training sessions. So if you want to know when these are coming up next, you can have a look. We're scheduled both for introductory courses as well as for advanced courses. And we're alternating between the European time zone and the Western or the Eastern US time zone. So if you want to join me on my afternoon, you're welcome to. If you want to join me on my evening, you're also welcome to. But it'll be a different month for each of those. So looking forward to that. And then yeah, so hope to see you all there. You can register there for each of these, either introduction, where you get more of an primer on OpenRI development, or the advanced ones where we really go into topics like data tables and traits and things like that. So should be good. Hope to see all of you there. Then also new is that we did a patch release of OpenRI, which you didn't always do, but we do this when we do some sort of experimental rework. And I think Sam, you've been instrumental in this one.
Yeah, yeah. So the kind of headline item here is that bottom thing in the what's changed list, the Gradle model rework, which I guess I'll go into in a. Do you want to go into it in detail now, or finish the other announcements and kind of come back to it? What do you think, Tim?
We can go in detail now. Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. So the the gist of it is that you know the difference between a Groovy script and a Kotlin script and a Gradle script, so far as Open Rewrite is concerned, is that there is this Gradle project marker attached to Gradle sources. And this is a model of all the information that we could glean from Gradle's public API that could be relevant to a recipe. So things like, what are the dependencies of this project? What are the configurations? What plugins does it apply? All these good things that a recipe might want to know. Oh, hi, Ravi. Hello from Seattle. Good to see you. Um, the All the things that a recipe might be interested in about a Gradle script, and there were a number of important shortcomings in this model, which made it hard for recipes to correctly make decisions about the stuff they were operating on. So maybe let me. I can pull up a test case and briefly talk about what some of the shortcomings were and how we addressed them. Yeah, so I will share and begin my screen. Yeah, so if we consider a fairly simple Gradle script like this one, we've got plugins declaration, that was part of the model, repositories declaration, that was already part of the model. And then we have several things that were not quite part of the model previously. There are these resolution strategies which allow, Gradle being Gradle, there's 20 different ways to declare dependencies. uh, oh, we got a question from Ravi about, is there a cost to the open rewrite training, which is an excellent question. And no, it is. It's a free training that you just have to fork over your email address and show up. So yeah, if you're interested in that, we do encourage everyone to sign up. Although if you do happen to work for one of our customers, we will often do a version of this training that is presented internally and customized to the needs of that particular organization. But if you are anyone else, yeah, check out the free training. Yeah, so the Gradle project model did not have any representation of this. And honestly, this is a pretty hard thing to represent because this just lets you pass in a Lambda, a closure, a bit of code to Gradle, and you can do kind of whatever the heck you want to dependency resolution. You can be like, if the requested dependency was Jackson data bind, the most common thing is to change like the version, but you could also be like, I substitute this for a totally different dependency instead, right? And because this is code that executes, there's not that much you could ask about the Gradle API to be like, what are the changes made to the dependency model through these resolution strategies? Because it doesn't know either. It just knows I ran some code and the dependencies are different now. So trying to include that in the model has been a long-term challenge. So I'll tell you what I did to try and help with that in a minute, because it'll maybe make more sense if we talk about constraints. Constraints are another mechanism which is newer than the resolution strategy mechanism that's very similar but more structured in what it accomplishes. So you can select a particular version of both direct and transitive dependencies by placing a constraint on it. So now I've added these constraints to the Gradle project, or the Gradle dependency configuration object accessed from the Gradle project object. These constraints will be listed there. So if you were doing a recipe that manipulated dependencies, or more likely just using one of the existing recipes that manipulates dependencies, like upgrade transitive dependency version or upgrade dependency version, that recipe will know what the constraints are and be able to update them appropriately if it makes changes to them. And so what I did was to model this is I modeled these as constraints, because I couldn't this code in here, this is a black box. We don't know what this code does, but we can observe the effects of having run this code. And so I can see that, okay, when all the dependencies went into the resolution strategy box, they requested one thing, and then they came out, they had a different request, and so, or a different target version. And so I generate a constraint saying, okay, well, there's effectively a constraint. I saw that after going through the resolution strategies, the Jackson data bind had a version 2.18.3. So I'm just going to add a synthetic constraint to the model. The Jackson data bind is constrained to 2.18.3, even though there isn't a constraint. There's just something else that did the same thing as a constraint. So it's not perfect, but it should be better. Another,
Which
uh, uh, is there a
immediately
question,
to
Tim?
me, oh no, immediately to me, I'm thinking, great, now we can convert one to the other, like the older file
Exactly.
to the new one.
Exactly. Yeah, and you could totally do that. You could totally do that before, because the code was in here. So you could like visit the code and look at it and be like, okay, this looks like a constraint. Let me modify it. But the challenge is that this code block, might not appear here at all. It might be coming in from a plugin that's applied to the build. So there's no guarantee that a recipe, you know, that the recipe is going to visit all of the code that actually affects dependency resolution. Indeed, most of the time, this is probably in a plugin somewhere. Um, Yeah, so constraints are there now, both explicit and kind of implicit or synthetic constraints. And then there's bombs. There's a bill of materials, right? In Maven, this is taking a POM and bringing it into the dependency management section and the import scope, and then it provides version numbers to the rest of to the rest of dependency resolution, allowing you to omit version numbers, for example. And in Gradle, the same concept is in this kind of platform dependency. But previously in our model, this just looked like this, except with the single quote still there. Like our model would say, hey, there's a dependency on rewrite bomb, but it had no record that it was being used in this way, that it was providing version numbers rather than providing a jar that's going to go on a class path. And so there were some hacks to like look for the word bomb and the artifact ID to be like, if the word bomb is in there, it's probably a bomb. But that's not required. You can use any dependency can be used this way. So now dependencies have an attribute on them, marking them as bombs effectively. So all of these things allow for Gradle recipes to be more accurate and crucially to compose better with each other. Because after you like upgrade a dependency version, the model can be kept in sync with those changes. Very similarly to platforms, in a multi-project build where you take a dependency on another project, we had not differentiated that other project or that dependency as a project dependency as opposed to a binary dependency. And now there is an attribute which will mark, these intra project dependencies as project dependencies. So all of this is to say that unless you're writing recipes that directly manipulate dependencies, this is maybe not super relevant to you. But if you were using upgrade dependency version or upgrade transit dependency version or dependency vulnerability check, all of these kinds of model enhancements will help those recipes to be more precise and to compose better with each other, as the model won't be degraded by one recipe run to the next. So yeah, I think that about covers the changes to the Gradle model. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot more details of how that works. So there's one final thing is I just now moved this tooling model had previously been in a separate repository from the main Open Rewrite build, and just as we were beginning this live stream, I merged that into our monolith, as it had a kind of a funky dependency relationship with Rewrite Gradle, where it would both like use Rewrite Gradle in the tooling model, and then the tooling model would obviously be used in the tests of Rewrite Gradle. And it had initially been separated out, but that ended up just being more trouble than it was worth, so it came home to the main repository.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So is
yeah,
that
go ahead, Tim.
gonna end up in a second patch release, or will we see that get
Yeah,
changed?
yeah. So we could do a patch release. It's not it's not really necessary to do a patch release of that, I don't think, because I just did a release of the tooling model from its separate repository place.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so that will be available. And since this is more of a reorganization than changing anything end user facing, probably won't do a patch release just for that.
And in terms of versioning, yeah, we're going into the weeds now, but
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So Rewrite Gradle tooling model was previously versioned separately from the main OpenRewrite repository and is on, currently version 3.2.3, which is behind where the main OpenRewrite repository is, which is, 8.58.1 or something like that. I don't know. We just looked at it, but I already forgot the version number we're at now. But
60.
since that's higher, there's just going to have been a gap. The Rewrite Gradle tooling model
Yeah,
is jumping from
we're not
3 to
gonna
8.
we're not gonna backfill over there. No. Okay.
No chance. Yeah. So good
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
So what else we got, Tim?
Yeah, so for folks eager to try it out, it is in the latest Maven and Gradle plugin versions, I believe. So
Correct.
that
Yeah.
should be good. And then beyond that, I also had some time to work on something fun. Like I had a gap in my weekend and a gap in between some meetings, and that meant that I was finally able to crack this. Well, not. So there was a annotation that I learned about at our Code Remix Summit in May, which is called inline me. It's an annotation coming from the Google tool suite, where they allow you to add an annotation to a method, which you can see here for a bit, but you can also see in the example that we're adding to our docs, where you can have a method like this one, interpolate a distance, and it takes some arguments in this particular order. But you can also say, well, I want you to replace this one with this template instead. And what you then get is that we now have a recipe that goes out in search of methods annotated with an annotation like this one. Then it takes this template, it looks at the names of the arguments that you have, and then uses the Java template that we know and love to be able to insert this snippet in place of the where it is being used. And then effectively what you get is that you're swapping these arguments around and calling that out in method. And what that looks like in practice is that you get, of course, through the Moodle platform, we can run these. And now you have an interpolate method being called with arguments in this order, swapped out with a different one called in this order. And then there's a lot of these types of replacements that very helpfully allowing you to move from one implementation of a method to a different one only by adding a single annotation to the deprecated method if you are a library maintainer. So it's a very helpful pattern. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're like, I want to move away from this method, but I know that I still have callers scattered across
Yep.
however many repositories. So you just add that annotation, and then assuming someone is doing a recipe run across all of these repositories of the like handle the what is like the handle inline me recipe, like what is the name of the recipe that acts on this?
Um, for, I think it's like inline methods. Let me see what I named it. Would have been helpful to memorize. Inline method calls. So this is inline method calls. It actually is already available. It's not yet in our docs. We need to do a patch release to get it in the docs, but it is
Uh-huh.
available in the snapshots that we have. It doesn't take any arguments. It's just going to find any method annotated with a particular annotation and do the necessary replacements there. And there
So
was a couple of hurdles in implementing this one. So it took me half a year longer than I would have hoped. But we didn't, for instance, capture the arguments going into annotations. So we
mhm.
had we maybe could see that it was annotated, but we didn't have the replacement string, which is no good if you're
Mm.
trying to do this type of work.
So did you have to make parser changes to get that in there?
Yep. So
Nice,
I connected the parser changes to keep the arguments to annotations. And
nice.
then I had a next challenge when it came to, if you look closely at this template, you can see that it's replacing three variables, A, B, and T.
Hmm.
And then we didn't actually keep the names of these arguments. So they ended up as like arg0, arg1, and arg2, which
Hmm.
doesn't align very well. And especially when the types can overlap, that doesn't mean that you can do any replacement. So we now, in the parsers, also pass in the dot minus parameters argument
That's
to keep
that's
this.
good. That's good. We would always want that information to be there. We always invoke the Java compiler
Yeah.
with dash parameters because it makes serialization easier. And there's a free tip if you're tired of adding Jackson like JSON info, like annotations
Mm-hmm.
every or JSON parameter, whatever it is, annotations everywhere to tell it that the parameter named A is named A. Pass in dash parameters to your Java compiler, and you won't have to. Yeah, it's weird that we weren't doing that when we invoked the Java compiler for parsing purposes, as we have always done that ourselves for that exact reason. So has that already been? Is that already released to the Java parsers? Or is that coming in the next release? That the Java parsers will have dash
It's
parameters on by
the
default.
next release. I felt
Gotcha.
silly where I thought we must have at some point used this, and
I would
but
have
we
I
didn't.
might have guessed that we did too, but
Yeah,
if I didn't do
yeah.
it, who else would have, right?
And I even
You,
discovered
it turns out.
a bug downstream where I had written a recipe at some point that would look to find these parameters names and you
Uh
try to
huh.
use them when you extract a lambda
Uh huh.
or convert a method reference into a lambda.
And I was
And
looking for names that would never be there. There's got to be something,
yeah,
some sad poetry about that.
yes, yes. So it was falling back to like the name of the type rather than the name of the parameter. But now it's been fixed, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, very good.
So yeah,
So the one thing I see here is that this recipe as written. it both discovers the inline me annotations and acts upon them in a single recipe run, yeah?
Mhm.
So this isn't yet going to work cross repository where an inline me in repository A gets acted on in repository B, because we're not the recipe runs that actually share information
I know
between
it.
repositories right now.
No, it does. It does work, but the only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't clear out the method declaration yet that is annotated.
Oh, it
So
works because the annotation information ends up in the type attribution for the method
yep,
calls. I
yep,
see. Okay, cool. So after you've checked in the inline me annotation, it makes it into the LST. Got it. Got it.
yeah.
That's really cool.
And this is why it already works on a library I had never heard about, but it's actually oh, then there's a second one as well. Where we're also doing this as list to stream, which now becomes stream, just because of the exact inline me annotation recipe that we run. So this annotation, it is in Guava, it is in some logging libraries, it's in a couple more. And I think with this support that we now have, I'm going to yeah, recommend adding it to more libraries still. So
Yeah,
I'm pleased with that.
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like you could really make a practice of doing this by like initially like you could search for deprecations. You could search for the deprecated annotation. Maybe we need a slightly more advanced search recipe of search for deprecation without an inline me. Go to all the deprecated methods and then wherever appropriate, add an inline me, and then you just run this recipe on the regular. You could probably make a successor to it of like, hey, or make a search recipe of find kind of like with removing an old feature flag, like
Mhm.
find inline me annotations where there are no usages of that remaining anywhere across the search,
Yep.
and consider those methods to finally remove them. So to come back
And
and clean up the deprecated method at the end.
there is patterns like this which we can discover as well, where you can find out that if this method is already deprecated and say it doesn't have that annotation just yet, we
Hmm.
can find that it is just a delegate at this point. It's
Hmm.
reshuffling the arguments, and this to us should be enough to figure out that we need to add this annotation.
Hmm.
And then from there, do the next round of clearing out the usages, and then do the next round of clearing out when there are no more usages. So it is a very neat little starter, which, like I said, had a couple of roadblocks before we actually got to this point. But I'm excited to have yet another way to define deprecations and replacements with a very minimal API. It's
Yeah,
quite engaging.
we should add this to the training because this is cool. This is very cool.
It is very neat, yeah. So
Nice
it's
nice work, Tim. I'm definitely gonna be like telling people about this when I'm giving like a demo or a pitch or whatever. Yeah, good stuff,
it,
man.
yeah, thanks. So yeah, pleased to have that finally going. And then with that, we come to the main topic of the night, which is going to be looking at HCL, Terraform, and OpenTofu. So with that, I'm going to share a slightly different screen, I think.
HCL, of course,
Mm,
standing for HashiCorp Configuration Language, right? And then
mhm.
Terraform being a popular uh, infrastructure as code sort of format for specifying in a I understand, although I haven't used it very much, like a cloud provider agnostic or neutral sort of way, like what kind of infrastructure you want. And so you can define a document saying, how many servers and load balancers and whatever you need with what kinds of resources, and then have a record of your infrastructure that you can treat and manage like code. Like, I get that right, Tim?
Yeah, very much. And of course, the odd thing is, if you hadn't ever heard of HashiCorp or Terraform, then you might have heard of them roughly a year ago,
Hmm.
but only in the context of there being some awkwardness with licensing and changes there. Where in response, that triggered a effort called OpenTofu. And OpenTofu is very similar in language and a yeah, set of automations that allow you to do those infrastructure as code type of use cases, but then based on something that is a bit more broader supported throughout the community. And of course, there's now the challenge of when and how to migrate from one to the other or to return back to Terraform. It's it's always things are interesting in this space at the moment. And
Indeed.
right.
And so this is source compatible. So the only difference between a Terraform file and an OpenTofu file is the extension. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So it's you go from I think yeah, OpenTofu they still use .tf or the
Mm-hmm.
.tofu,
Mm-hmm.
which as an interesting side effect we now support as of this afternoon. It's the parser now also tolerates those file extensions, and
Yeah,
then
so the,
we'll
the
pick that up
HCL
as we go
parser,
through.
although this isn't released yet because we haven't done a release since these changes, but so the very next version of Open Rewrite, the Terraform parser, will operate on these OpenTofu files, correct?
Yeah, yeah, we're taking a slight step ahead at like things to be released mid next week, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a lot of goodness coming in there. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then with that, like there has already for a longer time been a set of recipes that you can actually run on Terraform scripts or OpenTofu scripts. And to be frank, neither Sam nor I are experts in Terraform. But the neat thing of these recipes is that they make it quite idiot proof to do some very helpful automations in this space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to our app.modena.io tenant, which I think we spend a good part of our day in, then you can explore the recipes that we have available for Terraform. And then you'll find that roughly speaking, those are subdivided into three main use cases. One for AWS, one for Azure, and one for GCP. And each of those will have a set of recipes for you to apply best practices or very specific use cases where maybe you want to set some resource limits on the way that you're using your resources in the cloud. It's a helpful cost saving if you're able to get those just right, either based on usage or based on what you know the application needs. And then from there, you can run these recipes and get suggested improvements. And of course, I've explored this a bit, and we have quite a few use cases here specifically for Azure. And you can look at individual ones of these and run them, but through the magic of this platform, we can also very easily run them at scale. And what we do here is I'm going to run it against 241 open source AWS specific Terraform repositories. And that gets us these suggested improvements on various Terraform files. So you see here the 101 AKS cluster Windows quick start file already has a suggestion to not enable the by default Kubernetes dashboard, which is something that I, as a beginner, would never have thought to include in my Terraform files. But it is very helpful not to expose a dashboard by default when getting started.
If we look at the why did this change, what's the recipe's description for why this is a good thing to do?
So this
If
one
you
has a disabled Kubernetes dashboard, unsurprisingly.
Disabling the dashboard eliminates an attack vector. The dashboard add-on is disabled by default for all new clusters created by Kubernetes 1.8 or 1.18 or greater. So since it's disabled by default, I wonder if the recipe currently is smart enough to realize that it doesn't need to add that configuration explicitly if the Kubernetes version is high enough. Uh, does it say what the Kubernetes
So
version is in here in this file?
it doesn't really say, I think. So in this case, so what I've done is I've clicked
Might,
from
might,
the
might be safer
results.
just to disable it explicitly, kind of no matter what. Then
Yeah, yeah. If it doesn't indicate anything, then yeah, you'd rather have it disabled. So
good
this is
stuff.
just one use case, of course, and then there is a lot more, like only allowing HTTPS, which seems fairly obvious from here. Setting the retention of your logs, and then I've
It's
got
always good to have a retention policy on logs. Just on my home computer, where I have a small SSD. My oldest and smallest storage device is the one my operating system is on. And man, it keeps getting filled up, and I keep having to go in there to figure out what is adding stuff to the C drive. It's not me adding stuff to the C drive, not intentionally. It's all of the random applications I use. And just the other day, I deleted like several gigabytes of logs from
yeah.
like WebEx or something like that. And I'm like, what do you need all these logs for? Like, put all of you developers out there, put some kind of retention policy on your logs so you don't fill up my C drive. Damn it.
It's all
And
this
also,
these
don't take down your
yeah.
cloud infrastructure by filling up its small persistent storage with the log you're never going to look at.
Yeah, you don't want to get that call from your manager that well your AWS bill is a lot, or your Azure bill in this case is a lot higher than it should be just because you didn't set any log rotation.
Yeah, wait, do we really need to store 10 terabytes of logs?
Eh.
Uh,
So yeah, no, that's the neat thing here is just you can use this as maybe like a helpful way to learn about Terraform as well. Where all the suggestions it's making, all of them, and they're contextualized and helping you explore like various topics, like why are we making these changes, and then from there you can see, do you agree with the suggestions you're getting here, or are you maybe sure that you're not on Kubernetes 1.18 or below, and then from there make the necessary adjustments.
yeah,
And of course, uh,
one of the real like promises of this like infrastructure as code is that you can make your infrastructure legible, right? Like because you have it all written
mhm,
down in this file rather than just configured live in the services you use, people can look at it, review it, code review it, and also copy and paste it, right? It's a very common thing that you're like, well, I'm
yeah,
starting up a new service. It's kind of similar to this old service, so I'm just going to like copy their CI and their Terraform and their whatever else, and so you can get this like proliferation this of
yeah,
almost like species proliferating and changing in the wild of your Terraform scripts going out into the world and mutating slightly, and suddenly you have
yeah.
you know hundreds of Terraform scripts that are all slight variations on each other, and you might want to bring
Yeah.
some consistency to your infrastructure, ensure that they're all using HTTPS or things
And
like that, and these
none
sorts
of
of best
them have
practices.
their dashboards. Yeah.
Yeah, no
No.
dashboards, no to dashboards, yes to HTTPS, yes to the latest, transport layer security, etc. So yeah, running the promise of configuration as code is that you get to treat your infrastructure like code, and of course the peril is that now you treat it like code and have to keep it consistent and all of these other tasks to manage and maintain it.
But of course, like as with any task that we could automate, we're here to help. And one neat bonus of having it run through this platform is that, of course, you can also analyze the results at scale. So, one favorite visualization of mine is just to give you a breakdown of you ran a top level recipe with which is a larger composite, and then towards the right, you want to see all these individual changes that are being made to the various uh, files. And in this case, you can then start to see exactly which recipes are, let's quote unquote, say noisy, and which of these are going to be slightly more helpful. And you see this quite a decent spread. There's like not one very large block of changes, but let's say the enable Azure Storage Account Trusted Microsoft Service Access. That one is making quite a bit of changes, and then other ones only occur just once. So then, if you were to run this one as a
Standalone.
separate, yeah, standalone, you can kind of branch that off, and you'll have all of those 89 cases cleared out, and the other ones start to stand out a bit more. So,
Mhm.
very helpful way for you to dive into a bit of like what are you discovering on your use cases, what do you actually want to start to enforce automatically, and then on your next set of PRs, start to enforce these best practices. So,
That's an
that's
excellent
it.
point, Tim. That yeah, if you want to proceed incrementally with a large migration, you can use this kind of analysis to decide, like, let's just do the most impactful thing first on its own, get that squared away, then we'll do the next one. Yeah, so you really have control over how change propagates through your code base and can decide if you want to go full speed ahead on like checking the results of a big composite where you've got 1,000 things making changes all at once, or if you want to go more conservatively in a stepwise sort of fashion.
Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, like start enforcing this on a pull request, such that going forward you'll always have this set when folks copy paste from an old descriptor somewhere. So
Hmm, hmm.
pretty good. And then yeah, to just have go slightly beyond the recipes we already have, we also have a new one added just today, where we can now start to analyze the providers that you are pulling in into your Terraform files. So with Terraform, both OpenTofu as Terraform, they support a concept of providers that you can pull in and have different versions of. And then we now have a recipe that allows you to analyze the providers that you're using.
Got a
So a question
question
from
from
Ravi.
Robbie.
Yeah.
Yeah, about whether OpenReact could be used for cloud migration. And yeah, I think this is one of the areas where it could make a lot of sense if you had a lot of Terraform files that were all full of AWS specifics, and you were moving to Azure or GCP. Recipes could be a good way to both search and discover where your like Terraform or
Hmm.
cloud infrastructure lives, to find settings that might be specific to one cloud provider versus another, to replace those cloud provider specific settings with their appropriate replacements for the new cloud provider. So yeah, Open Rewrite absolutely can be used for cloud migration. Just set expectations of like these are there's a variety of different tools, searches and transformations and things all under the Open Rewrite umbrella that are potentially relevant for that. And you might find that one of those tools doesn't exist, but good news, Ravi. You're going to go attend one of our Open Rewrite trainings, so you'll learn how to add any missing recipes that you might find required for your cloud migration.
Absolutely. So then, with this new recipe that we have, like I said, we were going to take a look at how to analyze those required providers that you can pull in. And the easiest way to show you what it actually does is just to run it against some 56 repositories that we have here. And quite quickly, you'll start to see that it's trying to call out all of these elements nested under required providers, which they have a name as well as a source, like exactly what we're pulling in, and the version specification. So in this case, it's wanting to pull in something higher than 5.84. But there's various formats that they support in this way. And the neat thing here is you can start to see how this works at scale. So all the various providers that are being pulled in through this mechanism. But of course, then my next question always is okay, great. Now I can find them individually, but I want to analyze them in a different way. I want to just get a download going of all those providers that we have identified individually, and that gives you something of a export like this one. So you can see for all of the individual projects, all of the sources and all of the versions that we have pulled in of all of these providers. And this then allows you to analyze where you stand in your usage of, in this case, you have AWS. We also have some Cloudflare.
Can we zoom in on
You
this a
have,
little bit, Tim?
oh yeah, sure.
And Ravi's again pointing out that 70 to 80% of businesses are repatriating from public cloud to on-prem. I don't know if the figure is that high. I feel like I would, living here in Seattle, might have seen an AWS executive throwing themselves off a skyscraper if it was that high. But but yeah, this you could see how this exact recipe would be really relevant for that use case, as you could look through all of your infrastructure and be like, what of this is still calling out AWS? How much of this is
Mhm.
pointing to our internal on-prem cloud instead, and track your progress through the migration. Could probably even make a dev center card to that effect.
Absolutely. So this is just a first step, and now that we have this data, you can start to slice and dice this in various ways. Maybe cross-reference this with what are the newer versions available of these providers. Maybe you need to upgrade. In this case, of course, you're already getting a version higher than whatever you have, but it might be good to set a new minimum version going forward. And then, in this sense, get a grip of what you have already. And then very quickly you saw that we can run this on some 56 repositories. I also did an analysis on just a larger set, which was I think some what was it, 189 repositories, where just 1500 files have these types of descriptors out of some 32,000, and it just takes 41 seconds to run, which is the type of analysis that I just love doing. And you get again this type of export showing you all of these things you're using with some more interesting patterns in how these versions are defined. And that, of course, is the benefit of scale, where if you think you've seen all of the version numbers of this format, and suddenly the creative ones start to
Yeah,
show
but
up.
but have you? Yeah.
Uh, So yeah, no, it's this has been a fun one for me to dive in to a bit to again unlock a next step of visualizing and making code changes as needed when you move to newer versions or different and providers in this sense. So yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. And yeah, we could just thinking back to other recipes that could be relevant in the space. Could could have a Terraform to Open Tofu migration, which just trivially renames your file extensions from .tf to .tofu.
Just to make things explicit, indeed, there is this migration guide that they have, and they are
Hmm,
still very much. You can use one or the other. You can even
right.
have overrides where you
Hmm.
can have. This is mostly Terraform, but there's a slight override to make it tofu specific. There's
Hmm.
also preferences. If you have a .tofu file named the same as a .tf file, it will take the tofu one, so you can start your copy towards OpenTofu. So yeah, ideally, of course, we see some community involvement helping folks along this migration, but mostly it seems very straightforward to do this type of work. And of course, now with parser support and very easy recipe development, I think we're in a good spot to help folks with any use cases that they might have to this end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Well, I
Mhm.
think was there anything else you wanted to kind of say on this topic today, Tim?
Not really. No, it's. I think we can probably add an example like this one to our rewrite recipe starter just to show folks that there's more beyond just Java, YAML, and JSON type of use cases.
It's a good
But
idea.
mostly, no, mostly it's been a fun one to dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think maybe we'll end a smidge earlier today rather than go out to the full hour. But yeah, good stuff, Tim. Thanks for adding
Mhm.
to. I mean, really cool how you added the inline me recipe and fun to revisit the configuration or the cloud infrastructure as code. um, let's see another consideration is migrating from AWS CloudFormation to Terraform NCL. Yeah,
Yeah.
could be an excellent candidate for some recipes. I don't know the specifics there, but yeah, absolutely could have some good recipes for that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for Rafi for chatting with us and providing some relevant stuff to the conversation. And I guess we'll end it there. So until next week, have a good one, everyone. We'll see you on the Open React community Slack.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah.
Bye.